Hello and welcome to Free Legions Radio, the radio that is supposedly free from crippling judgment, human control, and the religious ways of the world. My name is Emanuelle. I am Norwegian, and for that reason you will have to deal with my Norwegian accent. Hopefully you will appreciate it. And to my big surprise, I am here being your host for the day. How did I end up here? As, the host of a radio in a foreign language? I can assure you it was not my idea. I never thought of doing radio at all. Actually, I was involved in a completely different project, something I really knew that God had put on my heart. And I'd been working on that project for many years. Not working all the time, but it popped up like 10 or 15 years ago. And I tried to make it happen, but it was too early, so it failed. Then it disappeared. I thought, okay, perhaps it wasn't from God. But then years later, it popped up again. Could have been 5 years, I don't know. I did another attempt, and I learned new things. I grew, and it failed again. It was not yet the time. And then it popped up again. This time it didn't take that long. It was just a few years. And so it kept on popping up and falling apart. And for each time it would fall apart, the time, the distance until it popped up again would be shorter and shorter. And so I knew, I had this growing understanding that this was indeed a project that God wanted, that this was His project. And so, as I was working on this project once again, recently, once again, it fell apart, and I was left with a question, what's wrong? My brain was going for a moment, thinking, is this depression? Is it time to get really frustrated and feeling hopeless and desperate? But I knew that it wasn't the end. I just knew, because God had shown me that, no, this is the beginning. And so instead of wondering, what am I going to do? Because I really feel obligated to do something when God has put it on my heart, and I don't want to be the factor that is failing. And so it would be easy for me to go into that drain, into that trap of thinking, what am I going to do? I have to fix this. But I didn't, and I'm so happy I didn't. Instead of thinking, what am I going to do? I was thinking, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, God? Because this is your project. So here I am. What do you do about that, God? I reached out and I had faith that God was in control and that He did indeed want this. And what happened was amazing. Because this time it didn't take years, it didn't take months, it didn't even take weeks. In a matter of hours, from the moment that the other project fell apart, I was invited to start a radio station to complement this other project. Not to replace it, but to complement it. It only took hours for God to bring up a different path. And so for that reason, I know that He's behind this. And I also know that it wasn't my idea. The name Free Legions, which definitely hints of a battle, the spiritual army of God and the free independent soldiers marching as they are led by God, not by men, not by human control, but the one and true Commander-in-Chief. And so why do we have that name? Well, it was the name of the other project that I started. It was not my plan for this to be a radio. However, it ended up being the name of the radio, we figured it would be the perfect name for the radio as well. For we are indeed in a spiritual war, and we are soldiers that need to take our positions. We need to wake up and start doing something on our own and not just follow whatever trend is walking past us. We are in a battle, and luckily God is in full control and He is full of surprises. And so this war is going on without most of the people on the earth even realizing, because it has its seat in the spiritual level, and then comes our mental, our emotional, and our physical choices as a result of that war. And if you are not aware, if you don't understand that there are forces and there are things going on other levels, not the physical, visible level, then it will pass by, and you will just end up doing what you are influenced to do. And so many people, even the ones that know that there are things going on, like Christians believing in God, still when it comes to the real thing, because there's no big label in front of them saying, hey, this is an attack, or whatever it should say on the label, on the sign. Because it doesn't say in the physical, it passes by, and they're not aware, and they follow as the enemy wants way too often. This battle is going on, and too many people are asleep. Too many people don't realize it because they can't see it. It's invisible. It's not physical soldiers in the street. We are in a battle, and luckily God is in full control. So there's many levels of this battle. It's physical in the way that we interact. It's mental, emotional, and simply on the spiritual level. And first and foremost, it is on the spiritual level. However, it is how we respond to that, how we respond with our thoughts and our feelings and our physical acts to those spiritual events. That is where the battle is going on. The war is on, and it's on for all of us. That includes me. And guess what happened? What always happens in a war? An attack comes, and it comes at the strategic point where there is most potential. Because the enemy fears that we will rise up and do something that can make a change. So certainly he will attack where there is the most potential to make a change. And so even just for a few days ago, I had to consider whether I was to pull this off or not. I didn't have cold feet, I didn't have a wobbling mind, couldn't decide what to do. It wasn't about that, but opposition came, and it was striking so hard that I had to consider, is this a position from the enemy, being so scared that I will actually make a difference? Is this an attack because I am in a war and I am raising up something that the enemy is terrified of? Or is this something that comes from God, where He is saying, please, this is not where you're supposed to be? So here's what happened. We had it all set up. The virtual studio was ready. We had not only one website, but several. And it had all these great icons and images and text and links and concepts, and it was all there. It was ready. In one day, I got blocked out from the virtual radio studio. It was a minor thing, it could be fixed, but then I was to work and complete the website. It was about 90% done. Long story short, it crashed. Not just one website, but all of them. The database disappeared, and it's still gone as I am recording this. I knew that it was opposition, so I was kind of like giggling. But as I was reaching out for prayer support from my partner in this, my internet disappeared. And then, as I finally got my internet back, but my internet doesn't go away. It's here all the time. But, of course, this day it did disappear. And so as I got my internet back and went back onto my computer to reach out for prayer, my computer turned itself off. That never happens. I have a new computer. It turned itself off, and it just continued like that. I almost lost my memory card for my phone, and it went on like that. Then I got an email from my partner, Yvette, that she was struggling so much. She was being attacked in a workplace, in a life situation, that she didn't know if she could do this. Actually, she was considering not being a part of this at all. And so within one day, everything was in chaos. Nothing was there any longer. And suddenly, it was all in my lap. And I had to consider, not only am I going to do this, but will I be able to pull this off alone? Sure, I can do the technical stuff. I can make images. I can talk. But half of my genes are kind of like from an eremit, like the cavemen that stay in a cave and never see people. I was like, God, I am really not the right person for this. You should choose somebody else, because I can talk, but, I suck at reaching out. I just want to be at home, and if anybody breathes on me, I'm going to be on the floor crying because it's too heavy. You made me way too sensitive. I can't do what, I believe you're asking me to do. I know that God can give us talents and capacities that we don't have in the first place, but gee, there's a limit, this is way too much. Go find somebody else. But still, here I am, doing a radio, because God is full of surprises. And so, in between all of these technical issues and the breakdown, I would get regular calls from my mom. And she would engage me in a different battle that was also at its peak. She didn't wonder if I'd been eating or if the weather was nice and if everything was okay. No, she was helping me writing something that was close to a master on eye surgery as a response to a 6-year-old legal case against state hospitals. In between all of these events, with my dialogue with the support team, trying to revive the database and attempting to solve the technical issues, she would call me and say things like this. What do you think of what I've been writing here? I'll read it for you. Due to the known complications of narrow-angle glaucoma, non-ophthalmos, EDS, anchored streaks, and excessive hypermetropy, we strongly oppose the claim that ordinary trabeculectomy was a well-suited solution for the patient. Yeah. And I will respond, yeah, Mom, that's awesome. You nailed it. That's it. And you should add, replacing the lens in a combination with a non-invasive filtering procedure at an early stage was later proven to be a far better option. Go get them, Mom. That's awesome. So there was a battle on many fronts, and the question at hand in between all of the eye surgeries and the databases was, am I going to start or not? Could I pull this off alone? Would I have what it takes? Could I possibly manage to gather people and to reach out? I went into a dialogue with God because I knew that no matter what I do, He is the only source, He is the only reason, He is the only way that I could do this anyway. I made it perfectly clear that I don't need a radio. I'm perfectly fine without all the work just to make a fool out of myself on air, with a special subscription to Haters Deluxe and all the mess that comes with it. But I also knew that we're in a battle, in a hidden war, and resistance often speaks of importance. I learned decades ago that when the attacks are piling up simultaneously, it's pretty much a sure sign of spiritual opposition. Somebody doesn't like what you're up to. And so I knew I couldn't close my eyes to the fact that it really seemed as if somebody really didn't like what we were up to. And that alone is a reason to continue. So if the devil find this initiative so threatening that he would go out of his way to try to tear it apart, well, that's a pretty good confirmation, don't you think? It's even a compliment. I see it as a compliment that what we're up to can indeed make a difference. This is not for me, but this is a principle in general. Whatever you are in, whatever you are battling for, when this kind of opposition comes, take it as a confirmation, take it as a compliment. He sees strength in you that you don't see. He wouldn't go against you like that if it wasn't for the resources and the potential that dwells in you and the God that wants to work through you. So we're in a spiritual battle, and our minds and our feelings and our perception and our acts are so important. It can make all the difference. And the words that we choose are like weapons. They are expressions of thoughts, and when they are aligned with God and God's truth, they are like swords that are charged with His cleansing power, and we can cut through anything. And every voice counts. I'm going to teach you Norwegian. In every show, I'm going to teach you a new word. And we're going to do it in a humorous way because I'm too creative to do it in a boring way. So today we're going to have a plain word. It's going to be the word for voice. Because this is a radio and voice is important, and our voices needs to be heard. Our voices counts. So the Norwegian word for voice is stemme. It's written S-T-E-M-M-E. Very simple, stemme. And then if you want to say the voice, then it is not two words in Norwegian. We just add a little N on the end, and then it is the voice. So stemme, and then the voice is stemmen. And that's it. Simple, huh? Anyway, getting back to the battle. We need to use our voice because prayer and truth and speaking the truth and raising our voice for God in difficult times is at the essence. And so I laid down everything and I said, God, if you want me to start a radio, surely I will. I will do anything for you. However, if I got it wrong, if this was my idea, then I'm out of here. I don't need a radio. So if you want a radio, it's in your hands. You'll have to make it stand up again, rise up out of the ashes, or I will forget about it. We're in a battle, and God is full of surprises. And that is exactly what I think the Norwegians felt the day that the Nazis came. During World War II, the Nazis were bullying the neighboring countries down in Europe, and the Norwegians were fully aware of it, but nobody expected the Germans to come all the way up to Norway. But that's exactly what they did. One morning, the ships started coming in, and they wanted to take Norway basically because they had production of aluminum and different kinds of resources that they needed in order to produce weapons and, maintain the war machine. And so the Coast Guard, suddenly he saw the big warships coming in, and they'd been traveling during the night so that they would not be spotted. And the Coast Guard, he got a very difficult choice, because he had a cannon and he could fire. He could hit the ship and possibly make it sink. At least he could damage the ship, delay them. But the thing is, he didn't have the authority to shoot. He needed allowance and clearance from higher authorities in order to do that. And there were no mobile phones, no internet, and so he had to make this decision on his own. It was a choice that he had to make right there and then, to shoot or not to shoot. The ship had not made any agreements. Usually they say, okay, we have this agreement and we come in peace, there's no worries. That was not the case. If it was a peaceful ship, he may end up killing innocent people. It could lead to further conflict that was not intended. So he had a difficult choice, but he chose to shoot. And that was a very good thing, because by that he managed to delay their operation. And the soldiers and the local people in Bergen, they got the time needed to rise up and start defending the city. They didn't manage to stop the Germans, but the delay was enough for the king and the government and people in high positions to be able to flee the country. And those are the people, in a war, they go for them, to kill them or to put them hostage, and by that, take the land. And so they fled to Sweden, and some of them fled further to England. And the Nazis, they took Norway. They occupied the land, and they took control over everything. And the enemy, the Nazis, they feared the people because they knew that there are so many of them. And if they are able to connect and gather and synchronize their acts and stand in unity, then we will not be able to keep this country under our control. And so they did everything they could to prevent that, to isolate people, to make them feel scared, hopeless, helpless, and make it difficult for them to communicate and unite and synchronize their acts. And for that reason, they took control of the media, the TV and the radio, and the newspapers and stuff like that. But there was one way that was really hard to control, and that was radio. Because even if they took control over the Norwegian radio station, people with radios could still listen to foreign radios, stuff that was being published abroad. And they feared that so much that they banned radios in all of Norway. If you had a radio and you were caught with it, they could kill you or put you in prison, like a concentration camp. Basically, you could end there. So it was a big deal. The ones having radios were brave people, and it was important because through the radio you got access to truth, to news, to the real stuff. You got to hear how the enemy was doing, where the weak spots were, what was going on. And so also you got to hear what the opposition was doing, both in Norway and outside. And this kind of information formed the basis of the people's reactions. If they were kept in a lie, not knowing what was going on, they wouldn't be able to know what to do, how to strike and be effective, how to synchronize and put up a fight. And without real facts and truth of the developments in the positive and everything that was going on, it would be very hard for them to get motivated, to stand up, to find strength. So the radio played a crucial role in the Norwegian battle against the Nazis. The Germans were really fanatic about this. They really feared it, and we should learn from this, because we are seeing the same kind of principle today. The truth is being censored. People on high places are trying to keep the reality away from the people, so that we will not be strong, so that we will not be motivated, so that we will not unite, and so that we will not know where to strike, where to focus our efforts, and how to be effective when we put up a fight. Internet and all of these technological solutions that are available today becomes our radio. Perhaps the old-fashioned radio will still have to play an important role, but at the moment we have many channels where people can connect with people. And that is so powerful. And this is key, because without it, we are isolated and weak. We are fighting an invisible war, and there is an enemy, and he has his ways. So we need to make our voices heard, reach out and connect, and form organically, dynamically, teams and ways and solutions to how to deal with this war. Because it's in our hands. We cannot wait for some big hotshot in the government to do it for us. It is us, and we are battling in the spirit. Don't go out and think that this is a physical war. We're battling in the spirit. But if we can connect, then we are strong. The enemy really fears it, and we see it today. They are trying to crack down on free media, alternative media, on the people's ways to gather and spread information.